Welcome to Not a Great Whisper podcast. This is your host, Katy Ray, and I am joined with the wonderful Ashley T. Brundage, of course, at BK and Creative Studio in Ybor City. Welcome, Ashley. Thank you for joining me.
Oh my goodness. So excited to be here.
I know it's a big time for you too, with everything, with your book coming out, Empowering Differences. And I really want to talk about how you got to writing that, where you are really on your journey, and you can kind of jump in to tell. Did you finish this during quarantine, this book?
So I kind of had written the book mostly before the quarantine.
Okay.
It was the finishing touches that happened during quarantine.
Because everyone was like, write a book during quarantine. I was like, no one can do that right now. So I was making sure that did not happen.
Yeah, I started in most of 2019 is when I wrote the book. But I will tell you that I was coming at the end of the publishing process, and I was getting ready to submit my book in June. And then June and the murder of George Floyd happened. And of course, I'm writing a book about empowerment and differences, and social justice is deeply tied to that concept. And so I said, you know what? I need to take another look back at what I wrote and make sure that it still lands for the world that is post 2020 and beyond. And that's when I was like, wow, okay. And I went back to my chapter on intersectionality and my chapter on privilege. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, this really still is appropriate, and it will land amazingly with everything that's going on. And then I said, well, shoot, yeah, I have my intersectional differences, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But looking foundationally around how we're all different from each other, not one person possesses all of what makes everyone in this entire world different. So I wanted to make sure that it was much more than just my voice in this book. And so I capture voices from 10 different people throughout this story of empowerment, and across so many different intersectional differences, from race to religion to language, you name it, to accessibility. All of that is baked out into this concept of empowering differences.
How did that empower you during like getting all of this information and just talking to different people? Like, did that empower you a little bit more? Because not only do you think it, but like you're talking to these people, you're hearing their story. Yeah.
Well, just learning and hearing from other people's lived experiences is really like the eye-opening stuff that we need to be able to really understand privilege, and how, if you're listening today, you have privilege. It's not a call out. It's not a shaming situation. You obviously have a listening device. You can hear us. You can access the information, and just knowing that, and then having that, and then what you do with that knowledge is going to be power for others. And that's empowerment.
And I love you are calling on people to just own it. Like, you have privilege. Like, that's it. Just that. I mean, you're not pointing at people saying you have more privilege. You're just like letting them be aware. Like, just that's what's
awareness
happening.
is kind of like that step one. That's actually in the foundation of the 4-step process to empower your differences.
I just got the book, so I will be reading it. But that's nice that I just segued into that. That's beautiful. So let's talk about your journey and what empowered you to first start the book. What was your initial, I need to write this book?
It really was step one of empowering difference.
So
it literally is a 4-step process to this book. And step one is knowing yourself. So you have to know yourself to be able to help others. You have to know yourself to be able to grow your career. And so that was really what I had to do. I had to know myself. I had to come to terms with all the things that I was navigating. And being an open transgender person in this society for more than 10 years now, way before it was hip or cool to come out as trans, I was about, just living my everyday life. And that was not so easy. 10 years. I mean, not that it's easy now,
No,
but
there's a little bit more support in place, which you're part of that support, And I understand when you say that, like it's like navigating, like what's next.
yeah. Well, and for me, it was like that eye-opening experience of looking for a job in the bad economic crisis time frame of 2008. After the 2008 crisis, we lost me and my family, my wife Whitney. You may have heard
Who's
her
on our podcast too, Whitney.
So we actually lost our house. I lost a job, and it was not good, not looking so good for us. And then in 2010, I was ready to re-enter the workforce, and I saw that I actually had a lot of privilege to be able to find employment but at an entry level role. And having been a general manager and a leader of a team of 50 people, HR point person, I was like, an entry level role, like this is really like a punch in the stomach. And so I said, you know what, if I'm going to start at the bottom, then I'm just at least going to be authentically me and just own it. And so the next day I started showing up for job interviews as Ashley and being authentic and out of the closet. And the kind of response that I got from the world was not good. It was like, we would never hire anyone like you. You have the wrong address. Please leave. I had a door slammed in my face. And I didn't change anything really about my capabilities or who I was or what I could do or
Your
my work
resume
experience.
was the same.
Yes. But it sure did change the way I saw the world. And that lived experience is what really got me down the path of wanting to write a book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, that's powerful in itself. Just being from HR background and you hearing these words from any corporation or job, and you're just like, wait. But from that, and you started writing the book, did that kind of trigger any like emotions from that time? Because that's a really hard time. Like while you're really just honing in on that lived experience, like that wasn't a good feeling.
Yeah. It definitely was not a good feeling, but everything that was negative that happened to me was really things that were helpful in me long term.
Yeah.
I mean, at first it was kind of not so good. But every negative thing that happened to me, I used it as a building block. And instead of like building a wall to surround myself with, I decided to build a platform to stand on, to be seen, and to be more visible in this world.
I love that. And now, where are you? What are you doing now?
So now I am growing a company, which is really exciting. So Empowering Differences is much more than just a book. I know that different people learn different ways, and you have to purposely position information to make it accessible for all types of learners. And so not everybody's going to pick up my book and read the 4 parts of the book, all 396 pages of
I
will. But I also have restructured that information that's in the book as a workbook, as well as an online course, which really ties into leadership development as a foundational principle of what the book is really built on. It's much more than just about my story of coming out. It's like a little bit in the introduction, but the rest of it is all about how to empower differences.
But your story, it makes you authentic. So listening to even parts of your story is very powerful with the people listening, because it shows them that they can also be true to themselves.
If I can do it.
And as a leader, you need to do that to then empower others.
Yeah. And so I did get that job finally of the place that was like, okay, well, yeah, we would love to have you. And it was all about how I led with empowerment to be able to get past that hump. And I took a big pay cut. I took a swallow of my pride, and I started as a part-time bank teller. And then I grew using the 10 key empowering actions found in my book to be the national vice president of diversity and inclusion for a major financial services organization in less than 5 years.
Awesome. That's super empowering, just sharing that. I think, you have to make it as clear. It's hard, right? It took work.
Yeah. I mean, none of this stuff is ever easy. Like understanding privilege, like we were talking about earlier, is going to be hard. It's going to be like looking in the mirror and thinking, wow, what does she mean? And what is that? I mean, I need to actually like look and list out. And so that's one of the reasons why I structured this book as a workbook, because the workbook has a self-assessment, which really gets you into the way at which you connect with others. And that actually leads kind of to part 2 of the book, which is knowing others. And all of the foundational things around how you see yourself, how you walk in this world, how you move throughout room to room, even if it is in a Zoom environment.
Yeah, right. Room to Zoom.
Yes.
I love self-assessments because I'm always mind blown at shit I didn't know about myself. I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Or, like personality assessment, all of that, because you're just like, wow. And it just opens your mind to be like, okay, I need to learn a little bit more about this. I need to research why I'm thinking like this. And I love that you do that in the beginning of the workbook. I think that's so powerful for people, as long as they're willing to put in the effort, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to make that commitment in yourself. But if you're going to be, enrolling in a leadership development course, then you need to make that commitment at that point. But I love some of these questions that are in this workbook, like, that just really kind of open up your eyes. Like, how many stamps do you have on a passport? I mean, it's an easy question, but it will give you a lot of realm into the world of privilege if you have visited other cities, states, counties, countries, you name it. It will expand your lived experience and the culture that you understand.
And being your different titles right now, what have you noticed is different from people's reactions? Like coming from starting as a teller and moving up in 5 years, like how have you felt that's really changed people's reactions or opened their mind to educate themselves more?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you that a lot of this has to do with upbringing. And in my world growing up, I was given lots of more access to things presenting to the world as a male. Males in the workforce are allowed to move a little bit more aggressively. And so that's how I was raised. That's how I knew to move and make moves like that. And so early on in my career, people would come at me and they would say, that women aren't usually this aggressive or make these kinds of moves, or don't apply for jobs like this. And I was like, well, I'm just me. It's not necessarily about a gender thing. It's like, I want to get ahead. And sometimes we can be seen as people want to throw out the B word or
yeah, right. I know. I'm sorry. If you want to keep it not explicit, we're explicit though. But you can say it. But no, I completely understand that. You completely understand that, and you can come from a lived experience as to this should not be the case.
Yeah,
like aggressive, assertive, whatever you want to say. That is a leadership role in general. Like that's how you get to your leadership role. You have to be able to speak up. You have to be able to own your audience. You have to be able to be in front of people and let them know your view. That perspective is huge. And yes, all the time when I would speak up in a conference room of males, it was like, okay, calm down, Katie. And I'd just be like, what? Like, you just said the same thing. I just said, like, right. What? Like, why? Yeah, all the time. And I love that you have courses too, because people might read your book and be like, well, where do I go from here?
Yeah. What's the next step?
What do I do? And I'm empowered. Where am I going?
Yeah. And that actually, I think, is a good pivot because it leads to kind of to part 3 of the book, which is centered around developing your strategy. Because you really need to have strategy in how you move about your next steps. And so that's really the foundation of part 3. And developing your strategy, you're going to have trial and error. You're going to make mistakes. How do you overcome them? How do you plan? How do you network? how do you network knowing now what you know about privilege and about intersectionality and about lived experiences of others? I mean, these are all powerful things, and you have to use strategy. I know that from my own personal life. I wasn't moving in my career using strategy as well as I could have. But then as I started to see things more clearly and I really finished the part 1 and part 2, then I was like, wow. And I started making like these moves. And in my career, when I started using strategy and developing strategy and then using it, right? Because, you can build a plan
all the time.
But if you don't actually start executing on it,
it's like your 100 to-do list. And
right.
Just like looking at it and you're like, yeah, I was supposed to do that 3 months ago.
Yeah. And, but when I started to do that is when I started to see so many changes. Yeah, I was a top performer in the sales world, but it was then using strategy is when I not only was the top performer, but I got inducted into the Employee Hall of Fame at the financial services organization that I worked for. So, that was part of what led to that kind of career arc. In order to make those kinds of moves, you have to be super strategic about your plans.
And have you always been like an organized, strategic person that did that, or did it just kind of you knew you had to start doing it?
Well, so for me, it was kind of a combination. I was definitely not thinking very strategically early on in my life because personally battling gender transition required so much kind of reshaping. And it really, for me, wasn't until I actually started taking hormone replacement therapy that I had this like cloud lifted over me. And people wonder like, oh my goodness, the trans community faced so many things. But honestly, really, it was having that literally it was like a dark cloud until I started to feel more comfortable about myself. So then I could start using strategy.
Yeah.
So that was really kind of like that aha moment for me, was when I was like, okay, I got this now. And I'm like making moves and I'm like ready.
I mean, that's a beautiful time to like realize that you can really take on the world. But that's really hard. And that's something to also notice, like that cloud. A lot of people have felt that. A lot of people
it's so
relate.
real.
Yeah. And that's something that's super powerful.
But if you're listening today and you're wondering, oh my goodness, like I know someone that's trans, or I know somebody who's just different than me. And I mean, that's honestly like the framework of empowering differences is like all about all of the differences that make us unique. But think about how you can be an ally to somebody else in this world, right? Where if you have a friend who is, is differently abled, and think about the accessibility challenges that might exist for them. Just being able to see, or being able to hear, or being able to get into the room, right? The physical room. You can advocate for others. And that's part of empowering differences, is you have to stand up for others. It can't just be about yourself. You really have to invest in others. That's what I did, and kind of volunteering in the community, serving on nonprofit organizations, and investing in the community is going to be really, really big about how you empower others. And
you're on the board at GLAAD, right?
Yeah, I serve on the national board of directors for GLAAD in New York City. And for those that don't know, GLAAD amplifies LGBTQ voices in media, all mediums, and we protect. And we actually serve, in essence, as a watchdog organization. And so if you're ever wondering, like, what, if you're looking for resources, you have to honestly really this leads kind of into step 4.
Well, does it?
It does.
I did not plan. I But yeah, how the conversation's going.
Yes. Well, that's like what makes a really great podcast.
Yeah, right? It is. Like, oh, look at me. Okay, I nailed it today.
But the final step of empowering differences is the empowering actions and how you use them. The 10 empowering actions to leverage change, right? If you really want to talk about leveraging change,
you gotta do it.
You need to bring the empowering data and what you're talking about and how you're going to make the impact. So at GLAD, we've trained 10,000 storytellers through our Campus Youth Ambassador program over the last 2 years. And that number, right, is an empowering data point. We get billions of media impressions throughout the years. Anything that has a number attached can lead to empowerment if you use that information to really amplify what your mission is.
And that's a lot of work in itself, just being on a national board. But again, you are now helping others, and that's really what it's about.
Yeah, but honestly, I also love the stuff I do locally in the city I live in, but I loved being involved with the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and even though I still am kind of involved on a national level with the LGBT Chamber. I help to lead their trans and gender nonconforming inclusion task force. And we're economically empowering the trans entrepreneurs that are out there to start their own business, which is really cool. And I have another empowering statistic on this. I knew you were wondering where I was going. But in the last year and a half, even during the pandemic, we've actually grown trans entrepreneurship by 400%.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's just through advocacy, educational opportunities, mentorship, all of these things we've been doing to really, build them up and give them an opportunity.
In all communities, just that support, that access, that just knowing that there's people out there to help get them to the next level is just so important in all communities. But I love that. That's a huge percentage. Just a good data point.
Yes. The data points matter and empowerment.
Have your numbers ready. Okay. Thank you. So what's your next, are you doing like I know you're in Orlando in January, right? Or virtual?
Yes.
Virtual.
Yeah. No, actually.
You are in Orlando, right?
I do have an Orlando book launch.
So launch it, and then speaking events, once we kind of get back into events, is something that...
Yeah, I have a few. Okay. I have a few virtual things.
Okay, cool.
I have an Ethernet cord in my house, so I can be anywhere in the world, right, in a moment's notice, and not be bumped from your Zoom or your. I
am stable Ethernet cord in my house.
Like the things that we never thought we would be telling people.
I will not cut out if I am logged in to Zoom. Thank you.
That will not happen.
Great, Ashley.
Yes. And even if the power goes out, because I live in Florida, right? And that can happen.
All the time.
I have the backup generator.
My thing is, too, I'm glad you didn't postpone the launch or anything. I know it's crazy times and events are hard, but I think it's really important at all times to be throwing things that are educational and for people to have steps to get there. Yeah. Because everybody's different.
Right. And you have
to be educating.
It's accessible too. Because for some people, they need to be able to actually see someone. And when, we hosted a book launch in person last week and people were wearing masks, people were social distancing. We didn't have like food out,
to share. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like they were literally passing out single serve apps,
which is so smart, right? Because meeting with people and kind of feeling the energy of the room is still really important.
Yeah, it was good, and then it helped people really connect. But for your listeners who are wondering about the online course, the book, and the workbook, I actually have packaged all of them together and created an empowerment bundle for you to kick off the new year for 2021. Like, you're ready.
It's such a good time. People are ready. New year, because 2020, everyone's like, it's out the door. 2020 is out the door. But for 2021, it's like, get ahead of it. Like, start it off right.
Yeah. So they can get that right on my website at empoweringdifferences.com/bundle.
Or just jump on it. I bet you there's a bundle button.
Yes, there is a bundle button. So yeah, that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, that's really good. And what made you, so in the beginning when you were writing the book, did you think about the workbook and the courses, or did it kind of come while you were writing it?
It was definitely something that I wanted to have happen.
Because you know how people absorb things differently.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was going to be able to finish them all at once. But I was the unfortunate beneficiary of a 4-month-long legal review on my book. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And,
wow.
Which I was able to, get a copyright and the Library of Congress, and all those things that come with come with the book. So, but while I was waiting for all of that, it allowed me to have the time to
make a bundle,
to get all that other stuff done and to film the videos. So the online course is actually really neat because it's like 11 coffee chats with Ashley.
Oh, I love it.
And it's self-paced. Yeah, it's a self-paced leadership development course. So you have the ability to, and it follows along with the workbook.
Okay. So now this is your first book?
This is my first book. Yes.
Did that give you, are you excited? Do you hear people say like, when are you going to do your second one already?
Right. Yeah, people have already asked that. And I tell them that my workbook is actually the second book.
There you go. It is, right?
Yeah.
You're like, this took a lot of work too. Can we look at the workbook?
And it's on Amazon too. For those that don't want to go to my website, you can actually go on Amazon and you can prime either the workbook or the book to your house.
Like tomorrow.
Yes. It is on Prime now.
So with the bundle, you're going to kind of keep that going for beginning of the year, right?
Yeah. It's going to go through January.
Okay.
So that way, you have time to go on there and check that out.
Okay.
There'll always be a bundle, but for right now, it's being specially discounted pricing. So you'll have to check that out and see.
Okay. We don't know what it'll be once this episode's released. Okay.
Right.
No guarantees here.
Right.
So let's talk about the listeners and what you really want them. Like if someone was like, give me your, what do they call them? Like elevator pitches. Like, why do I want this book?
Yeah, I think that it's all about career development, and motivational, inspirational story tied to that at the same time is like a double whammy. And if I could move from being a part-time bank teller to being the VP of diversity and inclusion for a major financial services organization in less than 5 years, while still being authentic and true to who I am and my identities and my diversity, then you're listening today and you're thinking, wow, yes, sign me up.
And my favorite is, I think the most important part is staying authentic to you. Like you maintained it. You didn't change your morals for a corporation. You didn't change who you were. You just learned every day.
Yeah, and we'll learn. And I kept it real, and I just brought my unique voice to every single room that I would walk into.
And I love that. I think that should be the message for everybody. Just stay authentic to you. And everyone had a rough year, but this can really change your perspective on how things can change.
Yes,
within a year, within 2 years, within 3 years. And you're not a leader where you don't still learn. Like even all your interviews and different voices in the book, like you learned from their lived experiences and you continue to absorb people's stories and you continue to move forward with that. And I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Powerful in itself. Okay, so where do we find you?
So yes, empoweringdifferences.com is my home for everything that's empowerment. And you can also reach us on social media at empoweringdiff. Yes, because differences are just too long.
You're like, I can't do this whole word.
Let me just make this a little bit shorter because there is a limit on Twitter. So we had to match them all. And then you can also connect with me independently if you want to at Ashley T. Brundage, all one word. And then I also have a website, ashleybrundage.com, where you can follow what I'm up to and where I'm going.
Yeah. And hopefully events will, figure themselves out this year coming up. 2021.
Yeah. I mean, so like we're planning some GLAAD Media Awards.
Oh, great. Oh, that's great.
For GLAAD in May and June. We'll see if we're allowed to have, if we have people or not.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, but it's also, we'll figure it out. You're doing it. You're still doing it. You launched a book. You were the person who launched a book during quarantine.
Yes.
You were that person.
I was that person. A book, a workbook, and a course.
And I'm excited. I have the book. Thank you for the book.
You're welcome.
Personalized from Ashley. But I'm excited to read it. I get super hype about stuff like this. I am lame and to the T of I just get empowered by other people's stories. I love to push forward in leadership. It's one of my favorite things about being a leader is just knowing that you have the ability to help someone else, get to where they need to go, be successful. So I love that you're here today. I appreciate you coming in the flesh to the studio. We are safe. We are 6 feet apart and we are talking. We will take a picture.
And I wore a mask when
as you walked in with a mask on, but we did not because we were social distance right now.
There was glitter on my mask as well.
Was there?
Yes.
Why was there glitter on you? Did you? Oh my gosh. Oh yes, of course. So first of all, I thought you meant a glitter bomb.
Glitter bomb.
So those never go away. The worst craft ever is glitter. But your mask is beautiful. It's more like a sequin.
Yes. It's glitter looking sequins.
And you can find Ashley T. Brundage at Not a Great Whisperer podcast page, at katyray.com, at The Real K Ray. I love that you're here. You're a beautiful human. I'm excited that your wife was on and now you're on and your book is out. I can't wait to give you a little update.
And
she is here.
Yeah. And Whitney has some contributions in the book, which is kind of exciting. That. She wrote a piece in chapter 20, the last chapter of part 4 around allyship.
Oh, I love that.
Which was really powerful. And then I also gave her the afterword in the book about how she uses the 10 empowering actions to leverage change.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Not a surprise. It's in there.
Yes.
I do love that. I think you both are a force to be reckoned with, right? You're just kind of teaching people, leading people, giving people hope that you can be where you are right now, but then you can hope for something bigger and be yourself along the way. And I love that. Thanks for coming today at BK Creative Studio. And I can't wait to read the book and give you my feedback too, if you care about it.
I do care. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Thanks, Ashley T. Brundage. Don't forget the T. It's super important. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.